And welcome to the other side of midnight. I'm Keith Morgan. I'm going to be your host for the night. Richard's having some internet problems. And we had a big issue with our website earlier this week, starting on Wednesday. And I was working frantically along with Robert Grasso, and we were trying to get this squared away. But we got most of the bugs worked out. It's still kind of delicate going on right now. But other than that, I got stuff together because I had to redo pages and some other things in order to get us on the air tonight. And I'm kind of glad I was able to get back to normal. Anyway, our guest for tonight is going to be Jonathan Womack. Jonathan's been working with Utah, and a lot of the artifacts there that are just not natural stuff. And I kind of showed Jonathan a picture that I took with my wife in the foreground and these objects in the background up on the top of this mesa. And one looked like a bust of Nefertiti. The other one looked like a pedestal that was a vertical column that was with square corners and edges, and it was part of the front of the mesa right next to the bust of Nefertiti. And years later down the road, I was looking at it and I saw this vertical pillar standing on its own little pedestal, and I showed it to Jonathan. And the next thing I know, he's sending a picture back to me, and there's this bird head etched into the side of the mesa to the right of that. And I didn't see that. And I was astonished. I was like, wow, here's confirmation that you got 4 out-of-place artifacts in one photograph. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is a lot of the stuff that Jonathan's uncovered. All kinds of alignments, structures, things that just do not fit the norm of being natural. And I'm going to talk about a few things. Some of the pictures that I took. If you go to theothersideofmidnight.com and you go to our show page for tonight, and you look at the first items, this is actually my items, you'll find that there's a whole bunch of things that just are out of place, especially in my section. When you look there, you're going to see the first item is actually not in Utah. It's a picture that's actually showing inside of a cave or area that Barry Goldberg actually took a picture of. And I noticed something on the wall. And that's very intriguing, but we're not going to talk about that tonight. So we can go straight to 1B. When that monolith showed up in Utah, the silvery pillar, that triangular-shaped pillar, everybody flocked into that area, and they said, "Oh, isn't this interesting?" And nobody looked at the artwork that was on the walls around them. And I'm like, how can you go into an area like that and not notice the strange artwork on the walls? And one of the walls had, in 1B, this little owl sitting up on this ledge. And if you click on the picture, it'll get bigger. And you can see the owl sitting on the ledge. But then on the right side, on the wall, you'll see what looks like a caterpillar with a face and antenna sticking up out of it. And then you see these dark red streaks coming down the side. That's not water runoff. That is paint. And nobody noticed this kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to jump through this real quick. But then other things started showing up. If we go down to 2A, this is the picture I took that has the bust of Nefertiti up in the top, the pillar with the little stem sticking out the top of it that looks like there was a head on it. And then down below, there is that pillar that I noticed years later after taking this picture. And I thought it was attached to the back wall. But then I found another picture later that actually showed I was closer looking up at it, and it was disconnected from the back wall. And Jonathan Womack actually went in and he used Google Earth to look at that from the back, from that mesa behind it. And this thing is like yards away from that back wall, standing out at the edge all by its lonesome. It doesn't look like something natural. And then to the right, you'll see the bird head. I call it the Womack bird because Jonathan discovered that, because that just blew me away when he put that out there. I was like, wow, you can't have 4 out-of-place artifacts in one photograph like that. And the 2B is the one that has where I extruded the images. And all I did was use Microsoft, I forgot which, 3D Paint, I think it was called. And I just put a rectangle around it, said, okay, separate this. And the way those came out is exactly how you see them. I did not try to trace or cut and make sure, it made this. I just put a box around it and it extruded it just the way you see them. Which tells me that if artificial intelligence, the program, could extrude these things, it must see the same thing that I'm seeing. 3A through 3C, 3E, that is the area in Utah where the silver triangular pillar is at. And the first thing in 3A, when I saw that, I said, what, nobody sees the frickin' puma head sticking out the side of the wall over there? My wife says it looks like a dinosaur. Hoagland says it looks like a dinosaur, but it looks like a puma head to me. You got the eye, you got the mouth, and you click on it, it'll get bigger. You can zoom in on it. But then on the left side, there was something that caught my eye, and there's this wide sweeping S curve that comes down, and then there's some holes, and I couldn't make out what this was, but then later I saw what it was. 3B is a picture from Mars that I believe it was Perseverance took the picture of. And in that picture is what they call the balanced rock, sitting on a sloping ledge. And that ledge that is sitting on has right angles and straight lines and doesn't look like it's supposed to be there. But then to the right of that, there's this, I thought it looked like a snake head sticking out the side of the cliff. But then when I really got to look at it, it looks more like a badger's head. And if you really look closely, you'll see what looks like the paw down below coming out, pointing towards the little balanced rock sitting on that sloping ledge. And I found that was very unusual. But this is the kind of stuff that we're not really looking at with a critical eye. In 3C, if you look at that, you're looking at the silver pillar again, the monolith we call it. And on the right side, where I couldn't figure out what that slope was, you see this big cat head. It looks like a big cat head, 2 eyes, nose, and it's etched into the wall. And it's bigger than the freaking puma head. And I'm going, this is crazy. 3D is I annotate what I'm pointing at. And then there's 3E. And 3E shows the, I think these were forestry guys that came into the area when all this stuff started up. And there's a huge rock on the right side. It doesn't look like it belonged there. It's got smooth curved edges. It looks like Egyptian type head or something. Oh, this place is littered with stuff. And if you look over to the right, you can see the cat head better. It's not as detailed as when you're further away, but you can see the cat head etched into the wall on the right. It's huge in comparison to the guys that are there. And what else? So now, this is the stuff that caught my attention. Now, I'm going to bring our guest on, Jonathan Womack, and he's going to take you through the things that he discovered. And that stuff that he's been turning out has been blowing me away. I'm looking at all this going, there's no way this is all coincidence. So, Jonathan, would you like to guide us through this?
Sure. I'll make a few comments about your pictures. I've painted a number of the photos you've taken, and I just didn't have time to fit them in tonight, but that time will come. So I remember seeing them for the first time and just looking at them going, gosh, that looks like a bird, and I see something. And now here we are today, and when I look at them, I think, how did I not see this stuff? Well, I just wasn't used to it, and you have to learn how to see this, and that's my job now. Since I came to the realization that all of this artwork that covers both the planet Mars and planet Earth, every square foot, it's this 3D type art, and what happens is the sun moves across the sky, and if you're standing in this canyon, let's say, you're going to see a scene unfold, and you have these characters and they're doing things, and then the scene changes as the seasons pass. So it's this continuous, it takes like a year for a story to unfold, and this is happening all over, it's all over the earth. You go to Mount Sinai, for example, and same thing. There's all this light play. So it's quite extraordinary. But if you're not used to looking at it, or you're not going to see it, and it does take a while to sink in. But now that I have, the magic glasses on, and I can see this stuff now, it pops out like it's a neon sign. So it's funny how things change and evolve. And what I'd like to mention in your picture, Keith, number 3A. Now, I told Richard on a previous show I had an idea about who the people that set this monolith up, what their reason might have been, their purpose, and this kind of thing. This is just because from what I've learned, I can see what they're doing, I can tell they've got a good clue. They don't quite get it, because for one thing, the ground should not be disturbed. It's sculpted and it's full of glyphs and it's part of the art and it has lots of clues. So to use a concrete saw and cut a space to put this monolith tells me something about these people. But in 3A, if you look at the top middle of the picture, you can see light coming through this slot. And what I've found with the arches in the park and all over the world, they fit into two categories. You have the enclosed arch, like delicate arch, and where it's a closed aperture. And then you have these open apertures. They're like three-sided arches. One side of it is open. And that's what we see here. And I've come to recognize the shapes of these arches are not random. They mean something. And believe it or not, they're like crest, sort of like a family crest, or the presidential seal, or something very recognizable in our galaxy to the folks that travel from star system to star system, and they go about the galaxy. The galaxy is an art gallery, and so when they see these arch shapes on the planets like Earth, they recognize it as the crest of these people, a certain family, and these are the main characters who are behind the construction of the planets and the sculpting of the planet. So in 3A, like I said, that at the top of the picture where you see the sun coming through that slot, now I instantly recognize that. And that's, for example, later in my slides, we're going to go inside of a chamber inside Park Avenue. I call the Park Avenue end cap. And there's a huge archway there where the light comes in. It filters down 25 feet into this chamber that's inside the monument. And that's the shape of the arch. So,
do you think it's just coincidence that somebody pointed this triangular shaped pillar straight at that opening?
No, they're trying to, they're thinking of light, what do you call it, celestial alignments. They want to see what the light, when the sun comes up, the sun would be coming up in the morning in the east here. We're looking, it would come right up there on a particular day. Alignments happen every day, but of course you have these major alignments on the solstice and the equinox. So the sun would come up there. There's also the mountain in the background, that mesa you see way in the background there. Yeah, that's all sculpted. I've actually painted. Again, I didn't have time to include this tonight, but wait till you see this area when it's enhanced and you can see what's there without having to get the magic glasses. It's so beautiful and stunning and wonderful. So I believe these folks were trying to measure celestial alignments of solar alignments anyway, of the sun coming up and what happens when it shines through this slot, because that is a sun slot. And these three-sided apertures and also the arches that are an enclosed opening, both of these function as prisms, and they send the light, they're bending the light, and they're sending it different places. They're like beam splitters. They're splitting up the light into different frequencies, and they're sending it here and there. And before I get ahead of myself, let's go to my first item, item 0, Anunnaki creation myth. I've used this slide before. Again, just to remind people that sort of put this into scale, what we have is, if you were an alien coming into our planetary system and you fly by Earth, the aliens have magic glasses. They can see all the stuff that humans cannot see with all the light going on. But they would recognize all this. And here we see planet Earth, and we have the Atlantic Ocean, and on the right, along the African west coast, I guess is, you should be able to pick out a sort of sea green. I've highlighted it in this kind of sea green color. This is the mother reptoid. I'm calling her Queen Hera, and she's, their mouths are always sculpted in a certain way. They're either singing or they're breathing this creation dust or mist or fire. The dragons are always breathing this dragon breath. It's all about creating. And so you can see the mother reptoid there. And then in the kind of purpley color, you can see a more humanoid face, side profile again, and looking to the left. And his mouth is also, he's breathing out. And out of his mouth is coming Slinky, who is he's all over the earth. These are main characters that I've come, you get to, they start popping out at you, and these main characters are featured around the earth, and I'm going to start giving these people, some of them I've given names, like the guy who manages the portals. I call him Dr. Strange, and I will be showing him to you in the next show that Keith and I are going to do called Arches of the Gods, where I take us through what the arches are and some of the things that they're doing and how they're powered and so forth. But yeah, Slinky's coming out of their mouth, and Slinky is blowing also, and you've got South America coming out of Slinky's mouth. So there's this whole creation story that is told, and so as we descend toward the planet, you start seeing all the art within the art, and right down to ground level. So it's really magical how you can park yourself, let's say 5 miles above Arches Park, and just look around and just immerse yourself in what they have created. It's I don't even know how to describe it. It's so fantastic. So let's go to item number 1, Dogon Dragon Composite. Oh, what did I click on? Let's see. Click to enlarge. Okay. Yeah, reptoid head on Earth, reptoid head on Mars. This shape is all over the Earth. Mountains, so many mountains, and you see this Dogon head or whatever, whoever this person is. This is a main character. And at the bottom of this image, I have, you can see like in red, this is Park Avenue, where you park your car and you start walking down into Park Avenue. But in red, and also on the bottom right in yellow, you can see the Dogon head. And you always have the mom and the dad, and then you'll have the kid or the kids. Let's see. And then I made, there's a link there to a YouTube clip I made. And what the clip is showing is a bright spot on this part of Park Avenue. They're everywhere. They're all over the Southwest and probably all over the Earth in these mountainous artistic areas. And what's happening, because I was trying to figure out what the light was doing. The light is this matrix of, oh my God, if you put on the glasses and you look, you're like, oh my God, what the? And so I'm always asking, the ether or these people who did this, because they're in a higher dimension than us here on Earth. And so I'm like, what is going on here? So it came to me that what they're doing with the light and the energy is creating, the planet isn't just an art sculpture. They turn it into a living being, and they use the light. The light is creating a type of intelligence. Instead of artificial intelligence like we have here, it's natural intelligence technology. Or maybe you could call it thought tech, because this is providing a matrix for thought and awareness. I've read about clouds being aware, that clouds have consciousness before they turn into like a thunderstorm and they discharge their electricity. So in this video clip here that shows this as just a 4-foot kind of square hole cut into the rock, and it lights up in the morning and at night, and it catches the light. So what it's doing is it's heating up it's doing a lot of things. It's heating up the rock. It's also lighting up the interior of the monument where there's passageways and chambers.
Which number are we looking at?
Still we're on number 1, okay. 1B, Crown Chakra. I'm talking about this clip I made, and it's just to show how there's all these spots where they're heating up these monuments. And it reminds me of Victor Schauberger, I think is how you say his name. He was a forester who was born in Germany in 1890, and he saw he saw the water and what it was doing, and that the water creates an electrical charge when you have different temperatures in the water. This part's a little colder than this part over here, and this is flowing over here, and you got a little kind of whirlpool over here. And he came to find out that you have this electrical charge in the water. Now, you're not going to get shocked if you get in the water, but the water is charged, and so is the rock. The rock is made of, this type of rock is used for a particular reason because of its composition. One of the things it has is called calcite, and the calcite is the bones of the rock. It holds the rock together. It's like calcium in our bodies. And when the calcite, gravity has a detrimental effect on it. So after 150 million years or so, the calcite breaks down, and then you have these arches start to collapse, and that's what we're seeing. So there's some urgency to get this. I feel some urgency to get this out there, so people understand what's there, and we can start preserving this better. But yeah, what they're doing with the light and the stone, they're creating an electrical charge in the stone, and then and it's creating this earth consciousness. It's really mind-blowing. Let's go to item number 2, and just an untouched photo looking down at Park Avenue, and then in number 3, I enhance it. And hopefully you can see what I've been talking about with this 3D artwork. Now, when we go to an art museum and we look at paintings and stuff on the wall, it's like a 2D thing. Not so here. These people are so out of control. Hopefully you can see, like on the left, you've got the bust of someone. Part of his face is cut off, but I think you can make out that that's somebody's face looking to the left, kind of. And then next to them, you have, this is a woman, I would say a female bust, and then kind of the center right area, you have the more yellow and stuff. This is, that's all Park Ave there. And as the sun moves across the sky, this is why the face on Mars, it's changed so much. It's because it's meant to change, and you're going to see different things at different times of the day and throughout the seasons. So this is a really, boy, they are master storytellers, because you have all these scenes unfolding, and it's all over the earth, so it's quite the story. There's a lot of chapters, and it really boggles the mind when you try to wrap your head around this. And an item number 4 is just another version. I use Premiere Pro to enhance these images, and there are some 25 filters, light blending filters, they're algorithms. And so I like this one. It tends to show the brightest and the darkest areas. And you can see how the sun works off these stones where you have these bright areas. I follow the light, I follow the sound, the water. I look at where the water, when it rains, where is the water going? And sometimes it goes into these monuments, and it goes down inside the monument. And it's like, it reminds me of the movie Dune. Where they,
okay, Jonathan, we're coming up on our bottom of the hour break. So I'm going to ask you some questions when we come back from the break. But you're listening to The Other Side of Midnight. The special guest tonight is Jonathan Womack. And we're doing Utah. So we'll be back after the break. And welcome back to The Other Side of Midnight. I'm your host for the night, Keith Morgan, and Jonathan Womack is our guest. And Jonathan's been pointing out some astonishing facts that these guys have terraformed this planet in such a way that they have incorporated images into large areas on this planet. And if you were here a few minutes ago, and he was showing us the globe, and he was talking about the reptilian images that were there, you could see those in the shapes that were formed. And he was talking about Slinky and everything. They're there, but nobody looks at that this way. They're just saying this is just random stuff. But these guys, if they could make a dome around the moon, they definitely could make, artistic artwork on a large scale. So I'm going to bring Jonathan back. Hi, John.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the pictures of 2, 3, and 4, and I know most people look at this and they see it as a jumble.
Yeah.
But there's actual artwork there that's been eroded away over a long period of time. And it's symbolic because it's got information in it that these guys wanted to pass down through time. And stone will outlast most everything else. And that's why they did most of their work in stone. And people think, oh, this is primitive if you're working with stone. No, it's not primitive. We're going to eventually go back to stone. Once we get through playing with our polymers and our alloys and all of that, we're going to go back to stone.
This is highly advanced technology, this stone tech and this thought tech. This is beyond our science. And let me show something in item picture number 3. I'm talking about all this. We're going to see a lot of dragons tonight because somewhere out there on this planet, the dragons, wow, I'm getting to know the dragons even. So in image number 3, for example, if you look towards the top of that image, the top kind of right, there's some text where it says Arches National Park Road. And it's written to show you the road and where it comes in there. And now that spot right there, for example, Arches National Park Road, that is right below that. It's yellow, and so that's the head of a dragon. We're looking down at it from the top, and it's got a beautiful mane and headdress. And then to the right of that, you can see the mom. You have the dad and the mom, and with the dragons, because they call it the golden hour. When the sun goes down and the sunlight passes through the Earth's, this happens in the morning, the blue hour, and at night, the golden hour. And the sunlight passes, it's refracted through the Earth's atmosphere. And you have these magical things happening. And this is when I do a lot of my research on Google Earth, you use the sundial tool. You just move the slider back and forth to see the light come, what's lighting up here. You kind of go a few minutes at a time and you can see what's lighting up. But yeah, those are 2 dragon heads there. And in all the gorges and all the rivers, like the Colorado River, I'm going to show in some upcoming slides, when you have these bends in the canyons, it's a sure sign that it's all dragon heads. The water is winding around, and they're all dragon heads, the stone part, So, a lot of dragons, a lot of these humanoids, and then a lot of these reptoids where it's like a reptile and a human were mixed together. Yeah, you get these mixes. So let's move on to number 5. And this is another image looking down at Park Ave. You have Moab is the closest city, town to Arches Park. It's just like a mile and a half from the entrance. And it's funny because that spot, Moab, is when you're looking down from the sky, that's not some random flat area. That is a special spot. And another thing worth mentioning here, in the middle of this image, you can see the court. It's called the Courthouse Wash. And it's that green, grassy area that when it rains, like I said, I follow the water. So when it rains, the water, you can see it would run off like to the right of this image, and then also follows, it goes to the left, so all this gorge, and you kind of follow it around, and it works its way over to Moab. So that courthouse wash is an important feature, because in this artwork, I think it oftentimes it's representing something that Georgia Lambert has talked about. She's our esoteric expert. And what I found in this artwork is when you follow the light, you find that, and this is true all over the earth where all this light play is taking place, it's lighting up the crown chakras and the ajna center, or the third eye crown, some people call it. It's 3 to 6 inches in front of your forehead, and then the crown chakra is 3 to 6 inches above your forehead. And then there's this process Georgia talks about. It takes place every 28 days, just like the moon cycle. It's where this liquid inside your brain, in the middle of your brain, works its way for 2 weeks down to the bottom of your spine, to your root chakra. And then the next 2 weeks, it works its way up to your brain, and it's now charged. It's gone through this 28-day cycle. So I just find this, a lot of these sculptures where they show Queen Hera or whoever, when the sun's going down, her crown chakra lights up, or the one in front of her forehead. There's a lot of that. And there's another one that lights up that's inside the head. Georgia calls it, see, when the soul gets older, when the body becomes the hands and feet of the soul, something magical happens. The crown chakra and the third eye chakra, together they create a brand new chakra, the heart inside the head, and it's inside your brain, and it's this chakra forms as you get more mature as a soul. And I'm also finding that depicted in all this art, where when the sun's going down or when it's coming up in the morning, this heart inside the head, you'll have Hera's head, and then the sun comes up and it lights up a spot inside her head, or the crown, or so this is going on quite a bit. And all of this is telling us something. So in item 6, I've just highlighted some of this area. Again, you have Moab up in the left, and you can see along the top from left to right is where the site of this mesa lights up when the sun's going down. And hopefully you can see some of what I'm talking about without me having to add tons of annotation. I mean, there's so much. The longer you look at this stuff, the more it comes out. So you're going to see lots of faces within faces and more faces, and hey, it just kind of goes on to infinity, it seems like. Item number 7 is another image of Google Earth without any enhancements. And then in number 8, I've added some, I'm not adding anything, I'm just adjusting the color configurations and the algorithms to bring out what I'm seeing. So whenever you're looking at the thing, at these from Google Earth perspective, what I do is, first I look for the biggie. There's always going to be a face that's the biggest thing in your view, and then I kind of start looking at the smaller stuff, the art within the art within the art, down to ground level. But so here, for example, it would be this Dogon head that I showed in one of the first couple of slides. That this time it's looking to the left. It's a side profile of this Dogon head. The light blue kind of thing at the top, that's again the crown. Everything's about these crowns and these headdresses. Everybody has headdresses and crowns of some sort. And so you see this Dogon head.
And we're talking about number 8 right now?
We are talking about number 8. That's
okay.
right.
All right.
Number 8. So you have this Dogon head that we saw on the Earth, and this is everywhere in all the mountain ranges, and you just start, it really becomes very noticeable and recognizable after a while. And you can see that this thing's mouth, by its mouth, you have another, like a baby. They're big into family. So you have a smaller, like Slinky, it looks like Slinky. A side profile of Slinky looking to the right, like nudging up to its mother kind of thing. And I pointed out the Tower of Babel, the TOB there, and the courthouse towers. And there's always another aspect of this art is how the magic is made with the shadows. They carve the rock so that when the sun comes over and moves, it creates all these shadows, and these faces just pop out as the sun goes by during the day. And then it disappears, just like the face on Mars. It shows up. Oh, and a few hours later, oh, it's gone. That's not a face. No, it is. It's just, it changes, and it changes with the sun.
What is that? So, what is the black line that looks like a cable buried going from the lower left corner up to towards the upper right corner of the frame?
You're not talking about the road, are you?
Is that a road?
Yeah, that's a road, and that's the equivalent of taking a black magic marker and drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa. We want to keep the human element where we don't want to be building any. I'm glad this is a national park because we don't want to build on this stuff. We don't want to destroy it in any way. We want to keep it. And you can see in the bottom left corner, there's that courthouse wash I was talking about. The green, it's a very grassy area because the water all comes washing through there. So let's move on here. Number 9. I just drew a circle around the courthouse towers there so you can see that the shadow, the canvas is the ground, and then the monuments are the 3D kind of element of the art. So I'm thinking you could probably see this without me having to point out too much. It's a face, and they have a crown, headdress. Oh, and on the right, the upper right quadrant of this image, I've added some color to the dragon because all these monuments, when you look at them, if you were standing down there looking at it face on, for example, you really get a better idea of it. But I think you can see here also that this is the head of a dragon, and it reminds me of an alligator when they're on the water, their head's on the water. And so this dragon, and it's got the fiery, they always have the dragon breath around the dragon's mouth. And the dragon has this wonderful mane that is I call it the Park Avenue end cap. This is the area where, like you and your wife, Keith, people park way off to the right out of frame, and then they walk down here through this lane that is formed by these constructs. And when you're in it, you don't see it, but when you look at it from above or from afar, you see, wow, that's a dragon, and they're big on the dragons. Dragons, everything's dragons, but yeah, how beautiful is that? I hope folks can see that. And another thing worth pointing out is when I use these light filters, you can see that these different areas, you kind of have a darker area, but then you have these splotches of bright yellow-orange that light up. And those are important glyphs that are telling us clues. And I'm hoping we can get some kind of linguist who has worked with, say, Egyptian glyphs, perhaps, and we can start getting I'm putting the symbols together in a catalog, and yeah, hopefully at some point we can start figuring that stuff out. Moving along to item number 10, it's another image without any annotations or enhancements. So now we go to the next page of my items, which is items 11 through 30. If you click on John 11 through 30, it'll take you to the next show page. And you'll see item 11. Now I've added some enhancement to the previous image number 10. And hopefully you can start to see what I'm getting at. I noticed this matching aspect of it back in October when I did sort of part 1 with Richard, October 9th of last year. I noticed when I was looking through what I call the sacred apertures, and I'm looking across Park Avenue through these peepholes at the mural across the way, a few hundred yards across Park Ave, and I realized that things on the mural across the way are matching with the peepholes. You know, it's like a partition you're looking through. And I've come to learn that the matching is also on a huge, profound scale. So as you zoom out further and further and further, and you look at these structures from an angle here, we're kind of looking at this straight on. We're at a bit of an angle, but you'll have a mesa that is miles away in the background, and you have foreground stuff. Then you have the midground structures, and they form, Queen Hare's face or these kind of things. And then you zoom all the way out until you can see the curve of the earth. I think I have an example of that coming up. You see the curve of the earth, and so now we're talking like 500 miles in the background. You have their crown, and then in the foreground you have something, and together it matches together, and it makes somebody's face. So there's all this matching going on. It's really, really cool. And let's move on to number 12. Here we're looking down Park Avenue is the upper right corner, and it includes, if you move to the left, the top part of this image, that's also considered Park Ave. That's the courthouse towers, and then the upper left you have the Tower of Babel, or Babel, however they say it. And then in the middle area, the left to right, you have, I call this we're looking down at the Grand Gallery, or at least one side of it. It's a U-shaped area, and it's this canyon. We're looking down, and what you're going to see when I add some color to it in image number 13, go to 13. So I've enhanced this, and you can see that the Tower of Babel and the courthouse tower are actually the ears of this huge dragon head. Like I said, I always look for the biggie, what's the biggest thing I'm looking at, and and then from there I work my way down and look at all the art that's embedded into that. So the really cool thing about this, as I'm going to keep pointing out, is the ground is the main canvas, and the monuments that stick up are part of the art. You have to look at them together. You don't just look at the courthouse towers. It's the ground.
I could see with the two that's standing up, the Tower of Babel Dragon and the courthouse town queen. When in the picture before you annotated them and brought them out, I could see there was something weird about those. And I can see the dragon down there on the right hand corner, looking in that direction. It's a big dragon, right? It's got the eye and it looks like a dragon to me.
Well, the biggie that I'm pointing out is the ears would be the Tower of Babel and the courthouse tower, and then on the right side you have the snout and the teeth. So this is the head. It stretches from left to right. It takes up most of this picture. That is the head of a dragon in this 3D art. And if you were in a helicopter looking down at this during the golden hours, the sun is setting and the light's refracting, you would see this a little better. And you just get eyes for it. You start recognizing it. So, yeah, this is pretty crazy. And I zoom in on it, item number 14. I've zoomed in now on the upper left area, and I'm hoping that people can see that the Tower of Babel dragon, you can see that the road cuts right through its mouth and its kind of face. The eye is very bright yellow point area, a slot on the tower part. But the ground is the head, and the tower is the mane. It's the dragon's mane. So I don't know if people can see that, but yeah, that's a dragon looking sort of to the right. It's facing us at an angle, kind of looking right there. And that's a dragon head. And in the courthouse tower, I'm hoping you can also see that there's a cat face that's sticking out there, and the ground is helping to form these illusions. You know, they're basically 3D illusions. And you know, you have the headdress. This cat has the headdress, which is the courthouse, you know, the rocky part there sticking up, and there's other faces in there. And if you go around and look at the towers from the other direction, you'll see another face. And it's this kind of thing. And it's so cool because if you change your position, no matter what perspective you're looking at, if you look at this area from the opposite direction, it's entirely a different scene. Everything is something else. So it's remarkable how they're able to create all this stuff. When you think about all the various aspects of it, it's really something else. So moving on, let's go to number 15. Now I've just zoomed in a bit on the right side, and I'm hoping you can see the snout and the teeth represented here a little better of this dragon. And I don't want to spend too much time on this stuff because, you know, people can come back and look at these. And so number 16, now I've zoomed in on this dragon's head in the grand gallery, and I just want to, this just looks like, you know, geologists would have us believe this is all interesting erosion. And this started 150 million years ago, according to them. And it happened over this time. Now we have all this neat looking stuff, but it's just rocks. Yeah. No, it isn't. That's the farthest thing from the truth. And in 17, item number 17, I've enhanced some of this. And you can see the crown face that a lot of people are familiar with on Mars. The crown face is on a Martian cliff. And so some of the styles, I guess you would call it, of art, what they do is they'll take a face and then it's overlapping. Somebody's face a lot of times you'll have three faces. They like the trio. You have three faces side by side. But instead of having them just side by side, they overlap them so that you have Sue on one end, Jimmy in the middle, and Linda on the right side. So they just squeeze those three faces together until they overlap, and their eyes, you know, one person's left eye overlaps with the other person's right eye. And so you've got kind of half of their faces are overlapping, and it's always their eyes will will match up. They overlap the eyes. And when you look at it, and it's the same, if you go look at the crown face on Mars, and you look at it from that perspective, you will see that there are two other faces next to the crown face, and they overlap each other. But yeah, it's just a technique of these artists and these architectures, or architects, who put all this together. So it's always, you have faces within faces, and
we're about a minute and 30 out from our break.
A minute 30, okay. We'll go to 18 real quick, and this is no annotations, and in the left you have Moab on the left side here. And we'll get into this image a bit when we come back from the break.
Okay, you're listening to The Other Side of Midnight. I'm your host, sitting in for Richard, because he's having internet problems. And our guest is Jonathan Womack, and we'll be back after the break. And welcome back to The Other Side of Midnight. Our guest for the night is Jonathan Womack, and we're talking about Utah. There's so much stuff in Utah that's just amazing. I know it's kind of probably hard for a lot of people to see some of this stuff. But when I was there with my wife on vacation, visiting my son when he used to live in Utah, and we went down to Arches Park, I was just stunned by all the stuff I saw. I couldn't get the aerial shots like Jonathan's got, but it was just looking at the statues and things that people look at and said, oh, this is just natural, and this is natural. No. This is artwork that's aged for thousands of years. What do you think Mount Rushmore is going to look like in a few thousand years? They're going to say, oh, there's the old men in the mountain. Oh, yeah, right. No, somebody built this stuff. I want to know who built it. And for those who don't know who the Anunnaki are, you need to go get a life, because they left us clues, and they left us tablets that are over 6,000 to 7,000 years old. And one set of tablets tells us the history of this planet starting 450,000 years ago. And it's written in stone. There's no King James version or any other body's version. And it just tells us the story of what took place starting 450,000 years ago on this planet. And they are the ones that built the stuff that's on Mars. They're the ones that did all of the work in Utah. They're the ones that built the pyramids. But, of course, we can't allow that to be said, because we have to take credit for all of this stuff. And you really think we moved those huge pillars and stones, and we can't even do that to this day? But yet, somehow, this can't be all true. All of the stuff that we're looking at, looking at the Badlands Guardian, that's not natural. And for you who don't know who the Badlands Guardian or what it is, you should look it up. And when you see it, you tell me that's a natural formation. There's too many details. And then you go 1.37 miles to the northwest, and there's another structure. It's not really not structures. They're dug into the ground, and they're both pointing exactly north. And they're both profiles. The Badlands Guardian looks like a profile of a Native American. The other one looks like the profile of a Viking with some long brim hat on it. And I'm going, no way is all of this stuff natural. And these things are huge. The Badlands Guardian is 2,200 feet from head to chin, from head to chest. It's got two parallel lines running down the side of the shoulder that comes out to our right. One curves under the vest, or occurs under the neck, which indicates he's wearing a vest. Zoom in on the neck, 2 parallel lines going to the back with a pattern in between it. He's wearing a neckband. And my friend says to me, I'm just surprised it's got an eyelid. So this is the kind of stuff that's right there in front of us, and nobody's paying attention to this kind of stuff. But Jonathan's been putting all of this stuff together in Utah because that's one of the most amazing places. So let's get back to Jonathan, and let's pick up where he left off. So
yeah, it's if we could go to oh, by the way, Mount Rushmore, they defaced a Palladian or Anunnaki, whoever. They defaced a monument to make Mount Rushmore. So, a monument that's 100 million years old and irreplaceable. So hopefully there's no more Mount Rushmores. Or part of my mission is to stop the human progress that will destroy any of this stuff. We don't want that. And my item 19, if you click on item 19, this is an important image. You have the town of Moab on the left. And one thing I want to point out is, I mentioned before, is that when you have the Colorado River here that you can see winding through this image, all of the bends in the river frame a dragon. So if you go on Google Earth and you just go down and just follow, say from Moab, just follow the river, every bend, I think you don't have to have the magic glasses, I don't think, just to see that it's all dragon heads. And they're all along the river and all these bends. So you can see some of that here. And another thing I want to point out is in the upper left quadrant, you have the railroad entrance to the U.S. Department of Energy nuclear cake storage facility. Now, out of all the places in America, they decide that they're going to they chose this mesa. The inside of this mesa, they're going to dig in there and store all this spent nuclear cake. Now, why would they choose this place? I mean, it's 1 mile from the Park Ave entrance. So you have 1.5 million people a year visiting Arches Park. You have the people in Moab. So right smack in the middle, and this mesa, I call it, I don't think there's a name for it, I call it the Corona Arch Complex. So this mesa, that's where they decide, so this is really bad. And I don't know, somehow we got to get these folks, we got to kick them out, because they've been in there 30 years, and I'm sure the DOD is working on figuring out the technology here, and they've dug in to this mesa and they found a number of these incredible chambers inside where there's all this stuff. And in fact, the tonight's banner, I made that banner. It's an animated banner for tonight's show. You see this aperture, it looks like the eye of a dragon, and you can see inside where there's all this stuff, and that's a cluster of prisms and apertures, and it's very near to that railroad entrance. And in fact, along that mesa, you have other same thing, these clusters of apertures that are advanced technology, and they're doing lots of amazing things with the light and the sound. And and also I added some color to that, the side wall of that mesa, the cliffs. I added some color so you can hopefully see that is all sculpted. That's not just dirt and rocks. These are all people. These are all very distinguished, renowned characters, main characters. There's humanoids and dragons. So all of that, if you just follow that mesa, oh my God, it's so decked out and beautiful. And also the ground will be, I keep saying the ground is the main canvas. So when you look down on it from the sky, you see the ground, and the mesa cliff makes a face, you know. And so pretty awesome. I pointed out Slinky. He's everywhere. And I notated Park Avenue, the Courthouse Towers, and the Tower of Babel. And we have that matching element going on here too, where in the far background, those mountains form, you know, the crown of a very huge face. Like if you zoomed out a bit and you'd go, oh, wow, there's a face there. And so it's that kind of thing going on. But yeah, the Department of Energy is, I think, are pilfering this technology. It was left for us. You know, Americans own all this land. The government does not own this. This is the people's land, and it's the same all over the earth, really. This is left for the people, and we don't want the government hiding from us the technology that is left for us to unravel and use. And so yeah, let's move on to number 20. As I said, when you zoom out, here I've just zoomed out from the previous picture. And you have Moab on the left. You can see it better now. And you can see that mesa cliff line that I was just talking about, and the Department of Energy, you know, railroad entrances there. And so we're looking down at Arches Park, and the middle area is, there's a name for it. It's called the Petrified Dunes. And on the right, you might be able to pick out the Balanced Rock complex there. That is also deserving of a show. It's an amazing place. Another thing, in the smack dab center of this image, you can see the Courthouse Wash, a green, grassy, branchy kind of area. So now I'm going to add some enhancements in image number 21, item 21. Because I'm reading the story, or, you know, these are all scenes that are very informative. They're telling us a lot. And yeah, there's a lot of red and yellow in this image. So I'm going to try to break it down for you a bit. Let's start at the top. It's kind of the top right. You have this sort of beige colored area. This, when I saw this, I'm calling him Yoda. That's somebody's face looking at us. And they're always breathing something out of their mouth, or something spilling out of his mouth. And it's the Courthouse Wash. If you follow it down, you see the Courthouse Wash, and the Courthouse Wash comes down into this purple area. That's kind of the bottom middle of this image. Very purpley area. That's someone's face, someone's head. And they have a, you know, very nice crown of yellow and orange. But yeah, that's someone's face. And it just reminds me of Georgia talking about the crown chakra and how it makes this heart inside the head chakra when your soul gets older. And now in the upper left quadrant, this is very cool. You have a large, you know, I'm always looking for the biggie. What's the big thing? You have this, I added some maroon kind of color to it, but that's somebody's face. They're kind of looking to the right a bit at an angle, and they're breathing this red-orange magma let's call it. This is some sort of creation material they're using to make all of this stuff. And on the left edge, you have all of this orange and yellow. Those yellow plumes are from dragon heads. Like if you zoomed in on this, you would see that you have rock. It's all these dragon heads, and they're breathing this dragon fire. You have two larger dragon heads breathing the fire, and then the smaller ones too with the yellow plumes. And it's all mixing into this sort of orange-red stuff, and then that spills over the edge of that mesa. And then everything is spilling down into this purple area. So I believe, there's stories of this Hera where she's a half human, half reptile. And I think we're seeing this kind of thing here in the creation story. And if you look at the winding gorge along the bottom, kind of the image there, where you have these bends in the gorge, it's always these dragons, and they're always breathing fire. Even the purple area, if you zoom in on that, you see that it's dragon heads breathing plumes of yellow dragon fire. And lots of dragon fire. But this to me is telling us about them creating all this. This is a monument to the creation of the Southwest or this area. Now let's go on to number 22. Here we are now looking, Moab is in the bottom left. You can see the Marriott Hotel along the bottom edge. And you got the roads coming in there to Moab, but you can see this canyon that I'm talking about, and it's the courthouse wash. It's a gorge, and it's winding through there. And I enhanced this image in item 23. I add the annotations. 23. How do we make the picture? Okay, yeah, you want to click on it so that it makes the picture. You see this annotated version of this image. And I've got the Park Avenue trailhead pointed out, the courthouse wash up there, the Tower of Babel. And I point out the courthouse towers. And on the bottom, you can see where the courthouse wash ends up winding its way down here into Moab. And hopefully you can see, I have another red arrow on the right side, courthouse wash. But if you follow that wash, that canyon, I'm hoping you can see that all the bends, it's all dragon heads. These are all characters in this story. There's no two dragons are the same all over the earth. They're all, they're like us. They're people, they're characters in this story. They have a role. And if you go on Google Earth and you just kind of take the camera along this gorge, you're just going to see, it's just so amazing. Yeah. You have large, can you see this kind of stuff, Keith?
Yeah.
Like in the upper left, I used I drew a yellow circle.
Right. I just wanted to clarify for some people trying to figure out what's going on. If you click on the text that says courthouse next to the picture, it'll enlarge the picture so you can get details. If you click on the picture, you go to the YouTube. I should have fixed that.
Oh, okay.
So the picture would enlarge, and then there would just be the link down below to get to the YouTube video. But if you click on the text that says courthouse under the number, that will enlarge the picture for you so you can see more details. Okay.
Yeah, the yellow circle I drew in the upper left corner is because I want to point out a face where you have the bottom half of the face, like their chin, and is the ground, and then the upper part of their face is the monuments and the structure part with the stone. But when, that is this is the 3D art I'm always talking about, is it's the ground and the structure, and you look at it from an angle and from the sky, and when the sun is coming up or going down. Yeah, it's that kind of thing. And I've highlighted a few other dragon heads, throughout this gorge, and then you'll notice a green circle there. It's near the center of this image, and that is a very cool spot. I mean, the whole gorge, both sides of the gorge are spectacular, but that one spot I wanted to point out because I think that's the video link you have here. Let's see. Yeah, this is a comparison. I talk about how the arches, the inner perimeter of the arch is a shape, and these are not random shapes. And in fact, they are known throughout the galaxy and recognized by other races that visit these places and visit Earth, and they look at this stuff. So on the left, you have this in China. This is a cave in China, and I'm looking I'm all over the world looking at this stuff on Google Earth. So I've come to recognize these arch shapes, and it's the bust of people, and it's usually back to back. So you have a side profile of somebody that's looking to the right, and then there's somebody looking to the left. And so the cave in China, that entrance, I recognized it, and I go, that's the same. Here's an example on the right in my comparison here. You have this wonderful sculpture here that when the sun moves across the sky, if you play that video, hopefully I've done a decent job of to show you what I'm talking about, and you can see how the moon, as the sun moves across the sky, that feature changes, and hopefully you can also see that it's the same shape as that cave entrance in China. And I find these shapes, like the delicate arch shape, for example, they're all over the world. So it's not just Arches Park, it's everywhere, and it's on other planets too. And these are recognized features that other races, they pick this stuff right up. They pick it right out. So let's move on to the next one, is number 24. Let's see, if we click on the text, the 3D samples video clip. Okay, that takes us to the video. Yeah, I just made another video clip that I'm trying to demonstrate to give people an idea of just how to look at this stuff, and how it's just so many faces within faces and more faces, and it's on a scale. It's so remarkable because it just seems to go into infinity. There's you change your perspective a bit, and you go, oh my gosh, that face is actually part of another face. It's a big dragon, and this is so there's all this going on, and I tried to make some video clips to help people see this, what I'm seeing. That this stuff just pops out at me. And
John,
yeah,
in the arch, the park that you had the yellow circle around with the courthouse wash and the little small green circle.
Yeah.
In the big triangular shape area down towards the bottom middle of the picture,
Mm-hmm.
That looks really familiar. That's a mesa with a domed section on the middle of it, is half a dome, and it's triangular shape. That does not look like a natural formation. It
Well, I
just
added
doesn't fit.
some, yeah, the bottom middle of this image, that's item number 23. I enhanced some of the red so that you can see it's the head of a dragon facing left. And yeah, and a lot of times not like all the time really, but the crown of the dragon head, you look and you go, oh, the crown is another dragon's head, and then inside that crown, that's made up. So everything is made up of smaller embedded art. It's quite fascinating. The more you look at it, the more you see. And I tried my best to highlight some of these dragon heads through this gorge. And, all through everything, it's just, yeah, the entire surface of the earth is sculpted, the ocean beds and all the land. There's no place on the earth that is not sculpted. That's the most incredible thing. It's just it's really hard to wrap your mind around. So let's go on to number 25. And I've done a in-depth analysis of this area. This is Devil's Tower in Wyoming, where they filmed, Close Encounter takes place. And sure enough, when you look from the sky, you can see that Devil's Tower is the crown on the forehead of a big dragon. The dragon is depicted on the ground, and then you have this Devil's Tower sticking up, and that's its headdress. And I didn't include any of those slides again. I just have so much stunning research and analysis that I had to pick out. It was hard to pick out. Just but one thing I want to point out on this, I've been talking about how they use the sun when it comes up and it goes down. It will light up spots on these monuments that I believe are depicting the crown chakra and the third eye chakra. So if you look at Devil's Tower, smack dab in the middle of Devil's Tower, you've got a lot of sort of light orange, but then you've got this small yellow splash of light in the pretty much the very center of it. It's below the purple area. It's in that kind of area, but yeah, that yellow splash there. And what's happening is the sun is coming up in the background over those 3 mountain rises, which are the heads of dragons. When you go over there and use Google Earth to swivel around and look at them, I've done that in my analysis. But yeah, the sun comes up and it spills just around the edges. They are masters of bending the light in ways that we have not got to this point yet. It's so cool how they do this.
Sorry, John, I'm kind of blowing through the break here.
Oh, it's break time.
Yeah. All right. You're listening to The Other Side of Midnight. Our guest is Jonathan Womack. We're talking about Utah, and we'll be back right after the break. And welcome back to The Other Side of Midnight. There's some interesting stuff going on with Utah. There's a lot of stuff. Alignments, mathematical alignments, sun alignments, things that just should not be aligning naturally that way. This is like the curve on Mars. People say the face on Mars is a trick of light and shadow, wind-blown anomaly, pareidolia, where you think you see faces, except there's no such thing as mathematical pareidolia. And that's where the Morgan curve comes in, because the stuff aligned on Mars is spaced exponentially. It creates a perfect curve. And Earl Torn discovered the X and Y axis. The odds of all that taking place go out the window. So that face on Mars is a real sculpture that was designed and built by intelligent people, and the Anunnaki are the ones that built it. And there's someone buried there, and you guys know his name. You've heard it, read it, said it in your lifetime. You don't know that's who you're talking about. But he's buried there. And on another show, I'll tell you what his name is. I'll also tell you the whole story if Richard gives me the opportunity to do that, because you'll look at this world's history in a different light once you hear what's going on. And it's not telephone. These are tablets that have been written in stone. They haven't changed. Nobody's altered them. And they tell the history of this planet. And it's like they laughed at me and said, "Oh, this is telephone." Well, this way of telephone goes like this. Somebody tells the story of what they read in these tablets to the next guy. But he also gives the next guy photocopies of the tablets so they can read them themselves if they want to. But that person tells the next guy, and he doesn't read tablets, but he passes photocopies on of the tablets to that guy. And this keeps going on, and nobody actually going back reading the tablets till it gets to one guy. He says, "Oh, wait, let me read these tablets for myself." And then he goes, this doesn't match what I was told. Well, I came across a similar situation at ABC. It kind of went like this. These guys were supposed to replace the old Sony 800 machines with the brand new Sony 860 tape machines. And these guys are bringing this machine back down from the edit room. And I said, "I thought you were supposed to be, deploying these in the edit rooms." "Oh, the editor looked over at the waveform monitor and he saw something walking through the vertical on the waveform monitor." And sure enough, I look at the waveform monitor and here's this vertical rectangular pulse walking across from left to right on the waveform. And I said, "Turn off the machine." I turn it off. Okay, wait, turn it on. And you come up with a clean envelope on the waveform. And then you see this rectangular pulse rise up from the center of the video above and below the envelope and starts walking across. And I said, "It looks like a fan coming up to speed." And these guys went bonkers. "Oh no, these are all AC fans. There's no DC fans in there." And da da da. And I said, "Are you sure this is a brand new machine? Anybody look at the schematics?" And they shut up and they looked at the schematics, and guess what? Sony had replaced those machines, the fans in those machines, with DC fans, direct current fans instead of alternating current fans. And that reverse EMF from the DC fans was getting back into the video and manifesting itself as that vertical pulse walking across the vertical. Now, how does that relate to what I just said about the telephone thing? Well, the schematics are the tablets. And if you don't look at the tablets, you're not going to know what's going on. And that's the only hard evidence we have of a history told to us by an alleged Anunnaki god, Enki, about what took place on this planet starting 450,000 years ago. Around us are all the clues. Utah has one of the biggest clues going. Other than the Badlands Guardian and the stuff in Alberta, Canada, and there's a huge image in Washington that you can see from the satellite photo if you know where you're looking. Somebody had the ability to manipulate stuff on a large scale, and we can't do that to this day without making things worse. And Jonathan is pointing out stuff that shouldn't be where it's at. And I know a lot of people are looking at these going, I don't see it. I don't see it. I showed people the Badlands Guardian, and I've had people say, well, I don't see it. And I'm going, you don't see something as obvious as this. But people have different concepts and ideas and visions of what they're looking at. And sometimes it gets clouded by belief instead of looking at exactly what they're looking at. Now, Jonathan's made some very fine points about things that are huge art sculptures, not only in Utah, but around this entire planet on a huge scale. And most people would say, oh, you can't do that. But I'm going to let Jonathan continue because he's going to show you some other stuff that's going to really blow your mind. So, okay, John, it's up, back to you.
Thanks, Keith. And Keith is going to open the phone lines for the third hour as well. So if you have a question, excuse me, excuse me, if you want to add to the conversation, you can call and Keith will give that number out. And so let's go to my item number 26. Just looking down at the Tower of Babel from above. And then in item 27, I've enhanced it. And my hope is that you can start to see all this stuff that I'm talking about and how the ground is a part of, it's the main part of the canvas, and all these, anything that rises up from the ground, like these stone monuments, is part of that art, and you look at it with a 3D eye, and it hopefully, it forms this image for you. But yeah, here we have the Tower of Babel. We're looking down at it, and I point out the Horus dragon ear. That ear is, you'll see it's the shape of, Horus, this bird character that's we see a lot in Egypt and so on. So let's go on to number 28. And here's looking at the Tower of Babel from the side. And this in-between thing is important. It's a common technique, I guess would be the word, that you see all over the earth. They'll have a large monument like this, and then along the side of it, they'll have, I highlighted in this sort of pink color, is another Dogon head, and it forms a channel in between the two structures. And on that purple Dogon head, I drew a red line from left to right. That is if you were looking behind that, you would see that in between crevice in there that's formed that channel, that's the line of that channel. And that is all apertures. It's a prism cluster, I keep calling it, but it's these apertures or arches. There'll be 12 or 15 of them in a line. And this is really advanced technology that we're pretty far away from at this point, but maybe a little closer after tonight, hopefully. But yeah, so this in between, you have a baby. You can just see the baby's head, part of it sticking out. I have a red arrow pointing to it. So you have like the dad and the mom, and in between them you have the baby. And the baby, gosh, it's basically slinky. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Let's see, would be 29. And we're a little bit closer now. And one really cool thing to point out is these sun slots in the upper right that I've circled. And I talk about these open-ended prisms. They're not enclosed arches, but they are arches. They're prisms. They're doing the same thing. It's bending the light and it's sending it, and it's splitting it up into wavelengths. And um, hopefully you can also see this ear I'd pointed out before, the ear of a dragon. I've given it some purple color there. It's, I guess, in the bottom left quadrant of this image. And you can see it's a bird, a side profile of a bird. That's just reminds me very much of Horus that we see in Egypt and all kinds of mythology. But yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's so much art, and it's, faces within faces. And as the sun moves across the sky, it all changes, and a scene unfolds, and it's part of this story. And as the seasons change, so do the scenes. So it's a progressive thing throughout the year as the seasons change. If you were to park yourself here in front of this, or set up a camera, a time-lapse camera, you would just see the coolest things occurring. And boy, it just make you feel like a kid again. It's just a sense of wonder and magic. Let's move on to number 30. I've zoomed in again here on Tower of Babel, and I think you can hopefully see that there's a lot going on here, and it's very reminiscent again of characters that we know from Egyptian mythology and Horus, and got Osiris, and it's bigger than that though. It's a federation basically. You've got these dragons and the reptoids and these humanoids and these people, the Dogons, and you've got the reptoids that are half here. There's a bunch of them, and they're all working together. This is a group project, which I think is very hopeful. That tells me that these people have gotten past, self-annihilation, and they've advanced, and they've reached out to the stars, and they've encountered one another, and they've become friends, and they work. So they've been around a very, very long time. This is not something that's 450,000 years old. I mean, they were probably here 400, but this goes back not just 150 million years. This goes back probably billions. I mean, these are very old beings, and they live in the higher dimensions, and sometimes they do come down into 3D space and do things. But let's move on to my last group of slides here. If you click on John 31 through 60, that will take us to the last part of my show page here, and item 31. Now I've just taken the Google Earth camera, and we're looking down at the in-between that I've been pointing out in the last few slides. And the sun is coming up now, would be on the top of this image. It's shining down. I have the arrows coming through the sun slots, and these sun slots are bending the light, and you can see the effect of this where the light is on the walls of the in-between channel. And yeah, if you move the sun slider in Google Earth, you just move it kind of back and forth, really is the best way. You slow it down, and so when you move it, you're just moving it a few minutes at a time, and you just inch it back and forth, and you'll see how the light, everything will be dark, and then the sun inches forward, and then all of a sudden it's lighting up all these spots. And there's all these patterns. So I found how the crown, light up a crown. That's a sure sign that there is a chamber below. And sure enough, I follow it, and I mark it with entrance A in this image. Entrance A is where the chamber is. That the whole channel through this in between is all these apertures. There's like, I don't know, 15 or 20 of them. There's quite a few. So let's go on to the next image, and that is number 32. Now we're looking from the opposite direction. We've taken the Google Earth camera, and we've actually gone inside of the Tower of Babel. And we're looking, the wall now has become transparent, and you can see the mesh lines, in 3D modeling. Every object, it's a mesh. And you can see the lines of the mesh that forms the Tower of Babel. They would have had a Google Earth drones come in and film all this, and then they use artificial intelligence to put these images together, and it creates these meshes that simulate these structures. So we're inside the Tower of Babel. We're looking back from the other way, and you can see the in-between sort of passageway going from left to right, and the chamber is on this far over on the right side there. And also every inch of stone is carved and sculpted and beautiful, and it's all these people again. It's all these people's faces and the dragons and Queen Hera, and it's all this stuff. There'll be symbols on the ground, symbols on the wall. I'm trying to assemble a catalog of these symbols, and then I'll spend some time on Mars too, where there's all these symbols, and it's the same language. So hopefully someday we'll be able to put this language together, and it's going to tell us a lot. So let's move on to item number 33. Here we are looking down into this in-between channel of the Tower of Babel. And this is where you would climb down from that shiny crown, and you say you would climb down with some ropes. And I've just added some arrows where you can see the Jor-El prism panel. That, this area is all dark during the day, and then during the sundown, during the golden hour, I've actually made a video clip of this because you have to see it for yourself, and hopefully it's going to astound you as it did me, because it's so cool. This is amazing technology that we need to get to. We've got to sort this out and decode all this stuff so that we can reunite with these gods that left all this for us. Let's go to the next item, number 34. Let's see, we still have 10 minutes before the next break. So item 34. So here we are, you've climbed down, we're in this in-between channel, and this is the entrance to a chamber. And in the bright yellow spot, I've just enhanced this with a few filters in Premiere Pro. And that yellow bright spot, you can see there's a lettering, or those are symbols that kind of looks like a snake or something. That's 11 feet wide, that yellow wall mural. And from there you can kind of walk around. There's a big hole going down. And, when it rains, the water's got to go somewhere. So the water's going to go down there. And the Google Earth video drone would have come in here. For this mesh to be created, tells me that the drone would have come in here. And it's mapping this area. And there's enough light. That hole might go further down than what we see here. That might just be as far as the drone went. It could go further down. So you want to be very careful walking through here, because if you fall, you're screwed. But yeah, so basically you have this area where you would start at the yellow wall mural, and you'd walk around to the right around this hole. It goes down, and then you come up to this Jor-El prism panel, and we go to the next item, number 35, and it's giving you another look, a little closer. That bright yellow wall mural, and you can see a little better now that it has these a glyph from left to right, these symbols and to me that is language. And in fact, I'm finding this same it's a pattern in all these. There's many of these chambers, and they have these. Every Jor-El prism panel is different, and so I'm finding some of these glyphs that when you enter the chamber, there's one. It has that same writing is in another chamber over in the Balanced Rock Complex. So it's important for us to unravel these glyphs so we know what they're saying and what they're telling us about the chambers that we're entering. So let's go to the next slide, number 36, I think. Yeah, 36. Okay, I've just zoomed in on the wall mural, and hopefully you can see a little better that the dark glyphs running left to right, and that means something. That is language. Let's go to the next slide, number 37. So this is the most crazy thing. We're looking down at this. This is all dark during the day, and then during the golden hour at night, and in the morning, the blue hour, this lights up. Like I said, I made a video clip of this. And when I saw this, I knew that we were looking at something beyond our science, and I added some filters. Let's go to the next 37A. Is this article that scientists have discovered. Before we had, was it gas, solid, and liquid? Matter has 3 states. And then sometime later, there's 4 states of matter. We have plasma. And now they tell us, there's a 5th state of matter, these time crystals. I mean, how many are there we have yet to discover this stuff. And it's slowly, little steps at a time, but it's starting to form a sort of working knowledge of how these arches work. So let's go to number 38. So here I took the this Jor-El prism panel, I call it. It's from the chamber inside the Tower. Well, there are a few chambers in the Tower of Babel, but I'll call this the main chamber. And I recognized when I use this light filter, and it turns the white panel, it turns it orange, and then I said, oh my gosh, I know that shape. That is the inner perimeter of Delicate Arch. And the inner perimeter of Delicate Arch is the frame of a family that's known throughout the galaxy. I think it's the Queen Hera and her family is what I believe. And I will go more into that when Keith and I do the show on, if Richard has me back, we'll do the show on the arches and the technology behind it. And if you look at the left edge of this image, number 37, and you look at the ground, it's kind of dark purple, but you have these bright yellow slots that the sun is shining from the left side, and it's shining down, and it's lighting up the ground. Remember, the ground is all sculpted with, and it's all information. It's all glyphs, it's language. We don't want to use any concrete saws to cut up the ground for any reason. Keep the ground intact. And also the ground, it's all peppered with the rock. That's all part of the technology, because again, the sun is hitting the rock, it's charging the rock. There's all these things going on within the rock, And then you have the arch, and the sun hits the arch, and all the magic starts happening. So let's go to number 39. Okay, yeah, I was just talking about this is again, we're in the chamber here of Tower of Babel, and there's this Jor-El prism panel. It appears white, but when you put the filter on it, it turns orange, and you can see it's the shape of the delicate arch, and it even reflects off of the floor. I wrote dragon eye with an arrow. That's a bright spot on the floor because the wall mural of this prism panel is reflecting off the floor. And this chamber is really cool because they even shape the chambers. It's the head of a dragon, it's the head of a Queen Hera. The chambers are also shaped, and it's all part of acoustical science, and this is all technology. And what you would do here is you do something at this prism panel, you activate something, and then you would walk sort of up towards the top right of this through this passageway, and it takes you either, I think it might take you to another spot on the Earth, or maybe even another planet.
Jonathan, we're coming up on the break.
Okay.
So you're listening to The Other Side of Midnight. Our guest is Jonathan Womack, and we will be back in just a moment. And welcome back to The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Keith Morgan. I'm your host, sitting in for Richard Hoagland. And Jonathan Womack is our guest, and he's teaching us about the demons and demigods and dragons of Utah. And Jonathan, you want to pick up where you left off?
Sure. Would you mind giving out the number in case anyone would like to call in with a question?
Yeah. Let me see. The number is 917 88. Oh, excuse me. I'm having a blind spot here. 889 8802. So it's 917 889 8802. And you can call in, and I will take your call, and then you can ask Jonathan questions. All right. Go ahead, Jonathan.
All right. Item 40, I have a picture here of from Superman the movie, and as you may recall, Kal-El puts the crystal in the little receptacle, and then Jor-El appears and tells Kal-El who he is and where he comes from and all this kind of thing. And yeah, that reminds me very much of these chambers where they have these prism panels. It's an area on the wall. You enter a chamber, and then it's a white. I mean, you even see this with tonight's banner, that animated banner I made for tonight's show. You can see inside the dragon's eye on the back wall is a white splash, and that is the prism panel in that arch, in that aperture, in that prism. So you would walk in there. That prism is 7 feet tall. You walk in there. Once you get inside, the ceiling's like 12 feet high. And, everything's sculpted. You can kind of see inside there that it's all sculpted. And so, yeah, there's a pattern. You go in, and they have these, it looks like the Fortress of Solitude, kind of, where it's almost like you should have a crystal and you would put it somewhere, and then something's going to activate. So let's go to item 41. if you make the picture bigger, this is very, I guess if I had one takeaway for tonight, I think this might be it. I made a video of this so you can see what's happening in the morning and at night where, this is all dark. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of people look at this and they go, this guy's crazy. This is just a bunch of erosion and there's nothing, this is just silly. But no, it's far from that. This is the most sophisticated technology on Earth. And so you're going to see the yellow mural that's on the left side here. In the morning, the first thing to light up is the Jor-El prism panel, which is in the center of this image. And at night, it's the opposite. That's the last, it's just the reverse. When the sun comes up, the Jor-El prism panel lights up first, and then the yellow mural, and then at night it's reversed. But yeah, this is a process that's happening. The sun triggers all this. The sun is powering this, the sunlight. So on number 41, Keith included a link to a video clip I made. So I hope everyone takes a few minutes to watch that. So you're going to see that it's dark and then the sun comes up. I do a few hours in. The process, when the blue hour, it is about an hour. And the golden hour at night, it's about an hour and 7 minutes as far as. And at the beginning of the golden hour, you see the Jor-El prism panel start to light up, and then halfway through the golden hour, about 32 to 33 minutes in, it peaks, it gets the brightest, and then it starts dimming for the next half hour or next 32 minutes. The whole thing takes about an hour and 7 minutes. And so if you watch that video, hopefully that I've done a good job there. I'm not doing any of this artwork any justice because it's, I feel like I'm very ill-equipped to do this. But hopefully some of this is getting through and people will actually see this for themselves and that I'm not crazy. So let's go to number 42. Here we are inside a chamber over at, I've switched over now to Balanced Rock Complex. It's about 1.5 miles from the Park Avenue area, the Tower of Babel, where we've been looking at. And this is very close to it's called a double arch. And the double arch is something that Ingo Swann found on the moon. It looks just like double arch at the Balanced Rock Complex. And I think the face on Mars, we're going to find that there is another, it's either the double arch or it's the delicate arch. I don't know which arch we're going to find, but we will find an arch inside the face there on Mars. But here in this image, I drew a green circle around this area is about 25 feet wide and about 50 feet length. And it's about 30 feet down, so you need some ropes to climb down in here. And it's all sculpted, of course, with their faces and all this. And below the green circle, you can see even there's a triangular, kind of looks like I'm not going to say a pyramid, but, this is all, we're meant to recognize, to decode this. It's not going to be that difficult because they want us to find all this. They want us to unravel all this. And so I just drew a green circle around this prism panel, and I'm not sure what we're supposed to do, but I don't know if we put a crystal there in front of it or something like that. So let's go to number 43. Just another shot of this. We're looking from another direction, and this chamber is also the shape of a Dogon head. Number 44, you can kind of see the shape of the head, really. The shape of this head is looking to the left, and it's looking in an angle. It's not looking straight at us. It's kind of looking to the side, but yeah, that's the head of a dragon. And I drew green circles around these two spots because, as you may recognize, that is very similar to the Tower of Babel chamber. And that bright yellow mural on the wall that I said was 11 feet wide, and it had that same trail. These are more vertical, whereas in the Tower of Babel, it was, kind of ran side to side. But boy, doesn't that look, when you look at that closely, it's like, wow, this is kind of the same writing, if you will. And these two green circles, the green circle on the left, you want to notice where at the top of that circle you have a white splotch. It looks like a number 7. And we're going to see that number 7 in another chamber in Park Avenue that I'm going to get to in a few slides here. So let's move on. Number 45. Yeah, I just couldn't resist throwing this in there. This is this is another area of the park, and some of these chambers that we're going to find in the coming years are massive. This one is 125 feet across. This isn't one of the massive ones, but this is a big one. I call it the ballroom, and it's all sculpted, and when the sun comes shining in through the aperture, it lights up. That's how I find these things. You look down from the sky during the golden hour, and you use the sundial tool to watch where you follow the light, and it's going to hit these spots. And this is all planned out. And so you go look at this shiny rock spot, and you look, and oh my God, there's a chamber in there, and the Google Earth drone would have come in here and photographed all this and then made it into a mesh that you can now go in. And I figure Google is probably using their supercomputer to put all this together. And they want to figure out, they've got a few guys at the DOD, Department of Defense, who are working on this because they've been, like I said before, pilfering this technology. They dug into the side of that mountain. And the railroad runs 1 mile through that mesa, and it comes out the other side right next to Corona Arch. And as I said in the previous show 2 weeks ago, we all know what happens when a train goes running down the tracks resonate. And that resonance is affecting the Corona Arch complex and these inner chambers, and it's messing it up because all these chambers are fine-tuned. They're fine-tuned acoustically and light-wise, light waves. These chambers are all tuned. So let's go to number 46. Now here we are in a chamber inside Park Avenue, and you have, I think you maybe see there under where it says 6 feet in yellow letters, under there, it looks like a number 1, and it reminded me of that number 7 in the previous chamber. So they'll have at least, now these are very low, not low resolution, it's low poly, they call it in 3D modeling. When you have a mesh that's meshes are made up of triangles. And when you have just a few triangles making up the mesh, it's low resolution. When you have many little triangles, you get a much higher resolution. So what we're looking at here is basically low resolution, but it's enough to see this prism panel. This is about 30 feet down. You would climb down through some apertures Yeah, it's about 700 feet. This Park Avenue end cap is where we're at. And so you climb down here and you're in this chamber here and you do something with this panel and then you can walk off to the right because there is a passageway that continues on into this chamber that's just off to the right out of frame. And I think I took a picture of that. Number 40. Well, 47, we're looking just another look with another light filter. And, I run all the filters. I use every filter in Premiere Pro, every algorithm, so that you can see different things, different characteristics of the light that is coming down. The light is all being bent and channeled down into this. This is a deep chamber. This is most of the day. This is all dark, but in the morning and at night it lights up. And yes, number 48. This isn't a very good picture, I know, because when I took this, I had sent it to Cynthia, and I said, "Do you see anything here? Does this make any sense to you?" And it really didn't. But we've taken the camera inside the Park Avenue end cap, and we're looking. The wall now of this mesh has become transparent, so we can see into this sort of chamber area. And the lower left area, you can see the prism panel with the number 1. And you would walk to the right, and I highlighted in purple. That's a dragon. Dragon's face. I don't know who that dragon is off the top of my head, but I do recognize some of the dragons. But yeah, you would walk to the right, and then you would walk up some kind of steps, and then the passageway then continues on to the right, and it cuts off there because I haven't been able to get the camera. It's tough to maneuver the camera inside these meshes. You really have to have a lot of patience. But yeah, it's worth it because you can see where these Google Earth drones have gone inside. The only way this is made is to have one of these drones has gone inside and filmed this. So there are passages all throughout Park Avenue. This is just one of them. And I see the same patterns over and over again, where you have a prism panel, as you're supposed to do something there, and then there'll be a passageway that takes you further inside. And in the background of this, all the yellow part, that's all Park Avenue, and that's all sculpted. Cynthia said, "Oh, it looks like it might be something." Yeah, every inch of that is all sculptures and faces and wonderful things. So let's move on to number 49. Okay, here we're back. We're back at the Balanced Rock Complex. And this area of the complex I call home base because when Keith first showed his photos, vacation photos, and I saw Balanced Rock, I realized that was time for me, that nobody else was going to do this, and I felt like I'm gonna be the guy, I guess, because I can't stand this, that these people did all this work and humans are pretty much oblivious to it. That is heartbreaking to me, and I just can't sleep at night, so I gotta do something about it. So I call this area of Balanced Rock home base because that's kind of where I started, and just branched out from there looking at all this stuff. So here we are at home base, and in kind of the middle area you can see into this passageway, and this you would have to climb up to this. It's hard to tell in this image, I know, but yeah, you'd have to climb up, and then you'd reach this opening, And on the left of this opening, you can see that the sun has lit up the wall where it has, are those glyphs, there's shapes. It's lighting up parts of the wall. None of this is by accident. It lights up the floor as well, as you can see. And the right side of this image is, again, we're bumping against the wall, and the wall has become transparent, and we're seeing through a wall. And this is the same thing you get in video games, like when you're playing a first-person video game and you're going through all these rooms and stuff. When you get up to a wall and you get too close to the wall, you notice that it's like you bounce into the wall. The wall becomes transparent, and you can see outside of the room you're in. And same thing here. We're looking on the right side. We're looking outside of the mesh, and you can see another cliff wall where there's a hole. You know, it's an archway, and you have that golden yellow shiny rock that they use on these archways, and that is bending and brightening and beam splitting, and it's doing all these things with the light. So let's go inside this passageway. The next shot is number 50. Now I've taken the camera, the Google Earth camera, inside this chamber, and we're looking back from the other way. And now you can really see that the wall where you enter, it would be on your left, it lights up these spots on the wall. And that is the prism panel for this chamber, if you will. So they're very different. Some are going to be the shape of the arches, like the delicate arch I pointed out earlier. And then you have ones like this, which are kind of like a control panel where you would, hit A, B, and C in sequence, and it would do something. It would initiate some kind of process, and some magical thing is going to happen. So let's go to the next image, 51. Here we are. I've just backed up the camera. I've zoomed out again in this chamber. You can still see the entranceway in the distance. I guess that'd be the top middle area. And on the left, I mean, you would walk through here. That opening is about 8 feet high, so I call it human scaled. When these apertures allow humans to walk through, it's like they were done on purpose on a human scale. So you'd walk in here, and then you'd walk to the left of this image, and you go up some steps, and you have some lit areas again. So there's like another prism panel there just under the sun slider. Oh, you can see on the sun slider too, the date is, you can put in whatever date you want. So I'll put in dates for the spring equinox, or the summer solstice, or the fall and winter alignments too. And this is going on every day, but those dates seem to have a special alignments associated with them. So let's go to the next image, number 52. Oh, this looks like a previous item that we had already gone over, I think. So we could probably skip over this, I think. Yeah, we could skip over this. We already did that one. So let's go to number 53. Okay, here we are looking west over, we're higher above Arches Park. I don't see the elevation we're at. That got cut off at the bottom right of the screen, but we're about, I'd say we're about 3-4 miles above Arches Park, and it probably doesn't look like anything to anybody. But if you spend enough time looking at this, and it's this 3D art, it starts. Yeah, it's just the coolest thing. I love looking at this stuff during the golden hour, and just as the sun has gone down below the horizon, and it's kind of dark and purpley. That's a really good time to see a lot of this wonderful artwork. So let's go to 54. All right, now I've just zoomed out another couple of miles, Google Earth, and we've just got a wider shot now, and doesn't look like much, but I spotted the Yoda face. I'm like, there's so much going on here, and these are hard to paint because it's so layered, and the faces are all overlapping, and it's just so extreme. It's hard. You'd have to paint these things 100 different ways to show everything that's going on in this beautiful artwork. So if we go to 55, I tried my best to, I made an animated GIF so that hopefully you can see better. I highlight the Yoda face. I think it's actually Queen Hera. She has these ears. I mean, she does look like Yoda. But this Queen Hera, you see her a lot. She's a main character. At the bottom, you got Slinky in the sort of light green colored area. And boy, it's hard to paint this, but it's all beautiful faces of these characters. And these people are all, we should be honoring these people, because this sculpting is just, they go around making intelligent planets. I mean, our planet Earth is conscious. It has awareness, and it thinks. So does Mars. And all of the rock planets, I would say. And who was it that said that the planets actually hold conscious, beings and stuff? I forget who was the first person to come out with that.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're about 30 seconds out from bottom of the hour, excuse me.
Cool.
All right. So we'll pick up where you left off, and you're listening to The Other Side of Midnight. My guest is Jonathan Womack. I'm Keith Morgan. I am your host, sitting in for Richard Hoagland. I usually do his engineering, so I will be back right after this break. Okay. And welcome back to The Other Side of Midnight. And Jonathan's been taking us through some really interesting things that I still think George Lucas actually got his inspiration from Utah. There's a picture I took. There's an image that Jonathan zoomed in on, and it looks like a lady sitting on a wall. And next to her is one of the, not the Ewoks, it was the little Jawas, the Jawas that was standing next to her with the hood over his head and everything. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then there's the other image that looks like the big pigs with the tusks. I forgot what they're called. And there's an image of them. And there's a whole bunch of other little tidbits in there, like a Jedi Knight with a hood over his head. And I'm wondering if he got his inspiration from Utah, and he just saw all of this stuff and he put together Star Wars behind it. Anyway, let me get back to Jonathan. Jonathan, you want to pick up where you left off?
Yeah, Luke grew up on Tatooine, which looks like, Arches Park. Yeah, I thought the same thing. I've seen these Jedi-looking characters, humanoid kind of Jedis, and I just wondered if George Lucas got his inspiration too. And the delicate arch has a couple of sister arches. One is over, I think it's in California. It's called what is it, the Canyon of Fire or something. It's where they filmed the scene where Captain Kirk dies in the movie Star Trek Generations. And there's another one in Saudi Arabia. So I wondered the same thing. I'm like, is George Lucas just going around and he's seeing these ruins and it's giving him this kind of inspiration? So that's a real possibility. So in number 56, indeed, so I do see this character, fairly regular, Queen Hera or whoever. She has these ears, and she's also on the Hera mural, Big and Proud, which is on the right side of this image, just out of frame. But I have painted the mural. I've painted this. This is a stretch of Park Avenue. This is the Nefertiti head, and I don't know if you can see it. Well, yes, that's right. I wanted to point out here, Keith, probably the first thing you pointed out was that Nefertiti head. You took a picture, you're in Park Ave there, you say, oh, it looks like Nefertiti.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know if you see it here clearly, but it's just, if you look at the highlighted Yoda figure, you would just go to the right of that a tad and then go up a bit. You can see there's a little splash of yellow orange color because the sun, what's happening here is the sun, we're at the spring equinox, and the sun is going down behind Park Avenue, and the Nefertiti head, this is right, the sun is almost about to disappear. So as you can see, it's catching the edge of the Nefertiti. I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully you can. But it's just catching it. The light is catching the edge of that head. And what you don't see in this picture, I'm going to go into more detail in Arches of the Gods. There's an archway just behind this part, a few hundred feet behind this. Nobody talks about it. I don't even know if there's a name for that arch. I've never seen anybody mention it but yeah, it's part of this light play, this technology that is taking place, and all this light is going around, and somehow it's key to the consciousness of the Earth. It's like some kind of technology that can create a conscious entity that inhabits the planet instead of a body. But yeah, really cool. I've painted all this area. It's wonderful faces. If it probably would help people if you want to go look at this stuff yourself. Looking at this picture, one way to do that is look at the top row, because this is always the crowns and the headdresses. And if you look at the crowns, it helps you to pick out the faces. So in another show, I will paint this and maybe do an animation where you can see the sun coming down, and then you're going to see the shadow play and all these faces. There's nothing there. A very cool thing they do is they'll carve a concave section of a cliff wall. So it looks like it's this kind of round cave. But as the sun goes by, it creates this illusion where all of a sudden that concave area looks like it's convex, and then there's this illusion of a face. And it's the same thing with the face on Mars. So the sun moves some more, and then the illusion disappears, and now it's back to being a concave sculpture. So it's really cool. Whenever I see these concave areas, I know that the sun's going to go by there at some point during the day and create the illusion of a face sticking out. You'd swear there was a face sticking out from the rock, but no, it's not. It's an illusion. So we got a few more slides here. Doing very good, I think. On time. Let's see, Canyonlands. Okay, number 57. I just had to paint some of this stuff. It's, again, this is after the sun has just gone down. You know, I follow the light, like I said, because I believe that also the stars and the constellations are represented on the ground somehow. And when the sun's going down, we're seeing that. And even if you were standing, like you and your wife, Keith, you're at Park Ave, if the sun had gone down, and you would have seen particular constellations come up behind the Nefertiti head, for example, like Orion would be up in the sky behind her head, or it's this kind of thing going on. This is all part of the magic. 58, I've enhanced, and again, these are hard to sort of outline because there's just so many faces and overlapping scenes. But the longer you look at this image, the more you're going to see. The more faces will pop out. The Dogon faces. I've come to know some of these faces, and just you start spotting them right off the bat. Okay, there's Slinky, and here is Queen Hera, and this dragon is breathing some breath to create this. And so it really starts, it's like a puzzle, and it starts coming together. And I don't know if this looks like anything to anybody else, but yeah, this is just the most amazing artwork. And in item 59, here I use the exclusion filter again to show us the brightest and darkest areas. And I think this is a way to see, we're looking at, you know, some nebula or some important, because I think the nebulas and everything is artwork too. So there's something going on here where at the summer solstice or the fall equinox or whatever, part of the sky, the Milky Way and the galaxy, because remember, the galaxy is their home. They're spread out over a swath of the galaxy, and they're going to incorporate that into this story that they've left for us. At least this is my impression. And we're seeing constellations depicted on the ground. When the sun goes down in these moments, it lights up places on the ground. And I haven't quite figured, I'm not a constellation guy, but I think that's all going on, and it's part of it. So here, my last slide. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, first I had a couple slides here for my ending, and I had Keith change it, but I'm going to talk about it in Arches of the God, where I was watching the movie about Moses. It's called, I saw it on HBO Max. It's called Exodus, Gods and Kings. It's a Ridley Scott film. Incredible movie. I highly recommend it. It's a retelling of the Moses story that we've all probably seen, the Ten Commandments. But I was watching that movie, and it's filmed over there in Mount Sinai and all that, where that took place. And I was just astonished that there's all these, what seemed to me, you know, obvious ruins and all these sculptures, you know, 700-foot tall bust of some guy. And then Moses is on the Mount Sinai talking to a rock that it looks kind of like a lamp table, and he's talking to this rock. And I'm thinking, there's, the same thing. They got all this light play going on. This area is conscious. It has consciousness. It has awareness. And he's talking to the spirit of the mountain. It's literally this consciousness. And I can believe some of these crazy things that they say in the story in the Bible, where the huge, like the Red Sea comes in, and they had these plagues. And so if you had this conscious being that inhabits these mountains, and there would be some, somebody with some psychic capacity could communicate with this entity. So, and I think that's where the story of Moses comes from. That's an example of that. And we have the same thing in Arches Park. So anybody out there, if you're psychic and you go to Arches Park, yeah, just let it loose. You're going to pick up on thoughts, and these are going to be emanating from the rocks, and it might seem unbelievable, but this is all real. And my last slide here is just to tease the Arches of the God show. So I'm showing here that when you use the Google Earth camera and you look through, what I did is I look through the delicate arch as if you were standing there in front of it, looking straight on. And then I made like a green screen fitting of the inner perimeter there. And then I took that form, and I could see on the back wall of the cliffs behind it there that I circled in red. And I put it, and it all matches up perfectly. It's just like back for the October 9th show when I looked through the sacred apertures and I saw the Hera's face. It just matched perfectly with her face. So same thing here. This matches perfectly with, this is Hera's, it's her family. And I can go into more detail.
Is that two faces, one back to back? Oh, one to the right, one to the left?
Well, what they do, you'll have, what's the biggie? There's one big face, but then it's made up of, yes, there's a face on the left, a face on the right. I like the face on the right, I've added some red. Well, I'm not adding anything. I shouldn't say that, but I'm highlighting it so that you can see the faces. And you always have, the families will always have the kid, like the heir to the throne. You pointed that out at Park Avenue, Keith, where you said, I forget what you call it, but that is, what did you call that? But yeah, that's the head of their kid. And you see the kid is all, there's many thousands of the oldest son. And I don't know if you see that here or not, but yeah, you got the kid there, his head, and the parents, and you'll have a daughter. You see some of the shadow art, because as the sun moves across the sky, you have different shadow faces displayed on the cliffs. So I will go into detail on this for the next show. I'm going to show you some of the most amazing things, because one reason this has not been uncovered before is because we did not have Google Earth. We didn't have drones, because you need to get out into the open air there, like with a helicopter or something, to see this stuff. So for example, if you go in a helicopter and you look from the opposite direction through Delicate Arch that we're looking through it here, sure enough, it lines up with another feature that is out of frame here, but yeah, it lines up perfectly, and it's this thing with another symbol that it looks just, it's another prism panel. like in the chambers. And what I'm working on now specifically is trying to decipher these symbols and these prism panels, because these are not random. Like I said, I'm looking at Mars. Mars has all the glyphs all over the cliffs and everything, and so I'm just by osmosis trying to get a grasp of these symbols and figure out what the heck they mean, so that, I mean, that's going to really open up a lot of this, and it's going to tell us so much more once we decode the language. So with that, we have 10 minutes left. So Keith, what would you like to add?
Well, I like 60, because when it pans over and that goes into place, I can see the two faces back to back to each other.
Yeah.
Of course, when you get closer with your red highlighting on it, the face in the back kind of disappears. But even when you're looking at it before you pan over and look through the arch, you can see the face in the back.
Yeah.
And the one in the front to the left, that it looks Egyptian. I mean, it clearly looks Egyptian.
Yep. And if you notice another thing, both faces, they have a crown, and then there's another crown over their head. So they both have their own individual crown on their head, but then there's a third crown over that, and that to me is their crown chakra. And so what happens when you move the sun slider from left to right, see on this one, it's the summer solstice. And as you move, you see that the inner perimeter of delicate arch, it's lined with this shiny, reflective rock, and it catches the light, and it lights up. You see it getting brighter and brighter and brighter, and then if you do it kind of fast, you see it flashes at the very top of delicate arch. There's a notch. There's a notch right there at the top, and that notch is capturing the sun at this particular moment on the summer solstice, and you get this flash of light, and it lights up this crown that these two faces share, and the light spills down the cliff wall. I mean, it's the coolest thing. I will make an animation of that for the show, so you can see how the sun is coming by and it's lighting up the inside of the archway, and you're looking through it across the way at these faces, and then you see it, and it goes flat. So there's some kind of magical technology thing going on, and it's doing something to that cliff wall. So I'm guessing there's a chamber inside there, and it's charging that chamber, or it's something like that. And like you said, when you get closer, you lose the face. So you want to be a certain distance to see these things. And I use my Star Trek 3D poster as an example, where I got that years ago, and I had it for several years. I never saw the 3D, and finally one day I was just standing far enough away from it, and I don't know, the sun was coming through the window at the right or whatever it was, and all of a sudden I saw the 3D, and it shows these Romulan ships, and it looks like you could stick your hand right into the picture, like it's 3D. So same thing here. You want to be the right distance from it. You either got to back up or get a little closer, and it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, we got about 6 minutes before we're end the show here, but yeah, I can definitely see that is like one of the best examples of what's going on, what we're looking at with that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you can clearly see the two faces, and I have no idea why nobody's picked this stuff up in all these years. it's right in front of us. It's right there in front of everybody. But they're
here's another thing. The inner shape of the arch. When you zoom out and up from here, you're going to look directly down on this area, the Delicate Arch complex. Well, wouldn't you know, it's the shape of the arch, that inner shape. Yes, the whole complex is in the shape of that. And I will show that next time. And it matches perfectly. Like I said, I made a template of the inner perimeter of the Delicate Arch. And I've just become very familiar with that shape, and I recognize it. So when I'm looking down at the area and it hit me, like, oh my God, that's the shape. It's their family. And this is all over planets, and alien. This is a recognized coat of arms, or whatever you want to call it. This is known by people throughout the galaxy, and it's time we recognize this too.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much in this area, and they keep dismissing it as just natural, and it's not. So I'm trying to figure out why people would be hiding something like this. After I introduced the Badlands Guardian to Ancient Aliens, and Travis Taylor and David Hatteras is going, oh, I think that's just a natural formation. And then Travis said, I think you can curve anything, talking about the Morgan curve. And then they do season 14, episode 2, and it's all about the Badlands Guardian. And they have George Haas, who's been working with the Badlands Guardian since like 2010, and Dr. Mark Carlotto, who did a 3D imaging of the face, and it's concave, not convex, because it's dug into the ground, and it's huge. And then they do a 180-degree flip on this on the show, and Hatcher says, "Oh, I think this is artificial. This is definitely created." And I'm like, "Well, that's not what you said at the Alien Con when I showed it to you." Eric Von Daniken, when I showed him the Badlands Guardian, he goes, "There is this. And I was like, all right. Because a lot of people don't see this, get the chance to see this stuff. And unless you put it in front of them and point it out, you don't have to really point it out. Like when I was talking about the owl up on the little ledge in the area where the monolith was, I showed that to this lady. She says, "Oh, I see an owl. It's sitting here on this." Yeah, and they can see it because it doesn't belong there, and all the other stuff doesn't belong there. But in this case, looking at a big area like this is definitely hard to see what's there because you don't get an aerial view like this up every day.
Yes.
But the number 60, that's the one that's kicking butt. I'm like, yeah, this is what this is all about. And that arch is not natural. That was definitely designed that way.
No, what I don't show here is, I'm calling him Dr. Strange, but he seems to be the arch guy. And he's big as day on this arch. I will outline him for the next show. And he's over at Park Avenue. We see him. So this is a very important scientist kind of guy.
Okay, yeah. John. We're out of time. I'd like to thank our guest, Jonathan Womack. And you've been listening to The Other Side of Midnight. And tune in next week. Or actually, tune in tomorrow. I forgot. They're going to be doing Richard's going to be hosting, and he's going to be doing his thing on, the moon. So See you then.
Seconds